I built my house on sinking sand, thought I could hold the ocean's hand, but every wave pulls me astray. I always seem to lose my way. I keep making the wrong choices, chasing all the loudest voices. They promise gold but leave me gray. Another price I'll have to pay. And I'm always walking through the fire.
This is AI generated.
Climbing higher just
It's
fall.
Joni Mitchell AI.
Terrible decisions keep me breaking. It's the shadow of my own making after all.
It's like a freaking harp. Anyway, welcome to 2025. This is the future. It's January 7th. You're watching NEUROPA. Raphael's with me. How you doing, Raphael? I'm with Raphael because I'm in his country. It's great.
I'm doing great, Andreas. Thank you. I hope everyone else is doing great as well. Today we have the Fallout 2025. And we are well aware on this channel, of course, the Gregorian calendar is quite arbitrary. Maybe not arbitrary, but quite specific. The new year, many people say, is at spring. But since most people still adhere to the Gregorian calendar, we're doing the same.
I'm a
At
fan
least
of
for reference.
solstice. I feel like once solstice hits, that's when I start getting, like we hit the darkest, shortest day of the year, and then more days just get longer after that. It's incredible. So everybody, we're post solstice. Here's Fallout. We have a link list that we're going to run you through. There's a bunch of stuff that's been going on. Obviously, the final experiment talking about people in Antarctica looking for a 24-hour sun and what's the deal with that. But some world news too. Syria, jihad squadrons, the Quagmire, not the Family Guy character. We'll talk a little bit about that speedy Captagon drug that Syria makes that everyone's been talking about. And we'll look at, America, right? Who knows? In a week, Canada could be America. Mexico could be America. The Gulf of Mexico. They want to change the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. It's crazy times. And can I just say, Trudeau, bye. Okay, I'm good.
Oh, yeah. Totally. No, not only Trudeau, bye, but also, in the past few shows, I've been mentioning that the party which got the most votes, again, I am not the most staunch believer in democracy as it is set up today, representative democracy especially. However, the party that had the most votes now for 3 months in Austria deliberately was not given the task to form a coalition government, which usually always the strongest party gets. And the president of our country, which I want to say is my favorite, officially only former Freemason, now, for some strange reason, after 3 months of these 3 coalition partners effing around, decided to give the coalition government assignment to Kickel, who is basically, I don't want to say the word, is not Stalin, but seen like the other guy by all of the left wing. We have a similar situation to Trump in certain respects. And of course, this is very auspicious or suspicious as to why in Canada and Austria simultaneously we have the head of government stepping back. And I'm not sure, maybe Trudeau actually was elected once, but in Austria, the chancellor we had for the past 3 to 5 years never was elected themselves into an office. And before that was the interior minister, under whose auspices one of the only terrorist attacks of the last 30 years in Austria, in Vienna, occurred, which was also a very suspicious event because just as this apparent attack occurred, you had some kind of training exercise where literally hundreds of policemen were on high alert, only two districts down in Vienna. And that's why very quickly it looked like like out of a movie scene. You had 100 police cars standing around there. Here you have Van der Bellen, left side our president, with right hand side Christian Kern, former social democratic leader. And what's kind of funny now, maybe similar to some other countries, is that you basically only have two opinions in the parliament, which is sad. You have one opinion, one could say generally speaking, by the Freedom Party, and then you have a more or less uniform opinion by all the other parties, at least in certain core issues, such as, let's say, WHO contracts or whatever else, big topics. And I'm not even necessarily believing that the Freedom Party would pull through with all of those, but it's just kind of funny because even though we would have 4 or 5 parties in the parliament, in a sense, you can boil it down to Democrat and Republican like it is in America in terms of, how should I say, basic, at least propaganda that they're producing. Whatever they'll actually do is open. But that's kind of an interesting and also sad situation because, of course, I would prefer to have 5 very diverging opinions and not 4 of them be pretty much the same. So again, I'm in a pseudo bipartisan system or whatever. So it's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, it does feel like there's a major restructuring of the world order is all. Every government having a convenient election or a hostile takeover, or just literally the CEO resigning, and I'm calling the presidents the CEOs, but it feels like that. It feels like that kind of a corporate restructuring. Pretty crazy. Well,
that's exactly what it is. Someone was complaining about your gain. I think you're fine, but what do you say?
Is it too loud, too quiet?
I think it's okay, but if anyone else wants to complain, please
Let me
do
know.
now. So we have an equalized audio, or someone just needs to turn down their own speakers.
Yeah,
no, I think you're good. On my side, you're not garbled or anything.
Good. Well, so we have, let's go to Trump's New Year's, or where do you want to start?
Yeah, we can just briefly start with that. It's just 2-3 things from America. So this is something kind of interesting or funny. What is a recurring theme, and even I noticed this because I have been watching Trump or whoever is portraying Trump for a few years now, and it is quite common and happens often. He loves dancing to the YMCA, and
America goes gay for Trump. Yeah, let's be honest.
Pretty much. Yeah. Which with the whole trans thing going around in multiple levels could be another. There's so many twists and turns in this game. It's just amazing.
You think it's a war between the gays and the trans? What?
I'm not sure, or between gays and lesbians, or whatever.
Who knows? Yeah,
I'm joking. Who knows? But here, you basically see him dancing. Yeah, look, he's into it. I'm like, maybe this is just a homage to Roy Cohen. He's thinking back to his old, I guess officially gay lawyer friend, right? I think that's no secret to say. And what's also curious here, you have them chilling out, and here exactly, you see Musk, and he's apparently even with his mom, who's also very hip to this. And of course, someone understandably from a strong Christian, maybe Bible viewpoint, would be concerned about this. And I just find it interesting that this is the signaling they are giving off. Of course, as it is well known, I don't trust any of these guys or any of their charades and performances. But yeah, I just want to point that out. I think that's a quite an interesting thing, which I think many people that are into MAGA or whatever may not even be so consciously aware of, which is kind of, again, interesting.
I mean, I think the homoeroticism of nationalism is pretty clear, but
yeah, again, it's always this. We had it with the have to say the right word now. Haida, who was the former old, let's say, sage of the Freedom Party 20-30 years ago. We have it now. Always when you have the nationalist guys, it seems there is this homoeroticism pattern somehow ingrained into that. It's kind of hilarious to me, honestly.
Interesting. They're connecting NAMBLA to YMCA. I felt like YMCA was maybe a manipulated charity, but non-political Christian movement. So it's a place. Yeah. Okay. Then we get into the Boys Town side of things, which seems a little interesting. Of course,
this is now how this Hurting Humanity channel is connecting everything. And I mean, to say there would be no connections at all would probably not be correct. To what extent it is as extreme as he's portraying, people have to make up their own minds. For me, it's mainly just about, again, how do you portray yourself, and then
also if you're saying that you're excited about the song because it reminds you of human trafficking, it might be because you're excited that you've reclaimed or you've redeemed the song, because the song was originally for this Boys Town psychic monarch programming sex trauma, and now those people have been removed, right? That's kind of
I'd
the
love that for that
optics.
to be true. I'd
That's their
love for that to
optics.
be true.
Yeah,
Sure.
exactly. That's their optics,
Sure.
though, right? That's the. Fair enough. Okay, so U.S. sanctions, a think tank founded by Russian philosopher Dugin. Oh wait, not secure. What are we gonna do? Well,
What? RT is
what?
not secure.
What do you want from Ming? Reload. Go anyway.
Actually, I'm even thinking. I don't even know. I don't even know how I access this. I'm not even sure if it's legal to show this. Actually, just don't show it. Honestly, now.
Oh,
No,
is
I'm
that
honest
why?
now. Don't even show it. Don't even show it. I don't know the exact legal situation.
Oh my God, this country,
You have
man.
to
This
imagine
whole
this. I
thing.
mean, I hope no one is gonna look up. Oh, I have this
Wow.
subscribers. What are you doing? But technically, the publishing of RT is banned in Austria or something,
Oh
or
my
the
God.
promotion or whatever ever. I mean, not only in Austria, in quite a few countries in the EU. Now I'm wondering how I even access the site because I'm only using Austrian VPN. So I don't know, how exact or strict they are about it. But generally, ever since the most recent conflict started with Ukraine and Russia, they wholesale banned RT. They also kicked out the RT office in Germany. They didn't have an office in Austria. Those guys who did that,
Man, human rights have
you even
gone.
have to think about this.
I know I've always critiqued the idea of human rights. I've been like, okay, but you gotta use you gotta pull your cards, all right? Pull the human rights card. ALICE training acronym and response protocols. So what does ALICE stand for? Alert is your first notification of danger. What? That doesn't make sense. Oh, this is all a longer thing. Alert, lockdown, inform, counter, evacuate. Wow. All right. What's this all about?
I just wanted to point out that there is this training program which literally is called ALICE, and I just find that highly suspicious. That's all. And it's also maybe I'm not exactly sure if this one or how I even found this particular thing, but within the trope of crisis acting and all of that, I just find it highly suspicious that you have like this emergency protocol and it's literally called ALICE. Welcome to Wonderland, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's
Alert,
all I wanted to point out.
Barricade the room, prepare to evacuate or counter if needed. Lockdown, inform, communicate the violent intruder's location in a direction real time. Counter, create noise, movement, distance, and distraction with the intent of reducing the shooter's ability to shoot accurately. Evacuate, when safe to do so, remove yourself from the danger zone. So this is probably what they're training everyone to do in, wow, okay. Kind of interesting. Okay, how about some Syria? Let's
talk about
see.
something less contentious. Let's talk about Syria.
Right. I think we can all agree.
Yeah, so these also here it was just because we had mentioned it on previous shows. Honestly, I don't even have all the thing in like short-term memory anymore, but these are just interesting documentaries to understand a little bit that there is some backstory behind whatever happened. I'm not even claiming that these documentaries are entirely accurate or unbiased, but I just find it interesting the few hours of footage and documentary you can find to look at it to kind of at least get an idea of the narratives. Whatever really happens on the ground, there's millions of people and the camera can only capture so much, right? Even if you try to do your best, but at least to see something.
Look at how clean this truck is. Like these wheels look kind of brand new and everything. I mean, they're not brand new, but like everything looks clean, and they just look like they just smeared mud all over the truck, like on purpose.
Yeah, that's what it
kind
looks
of
like.
Weird. Yeah, it's like a brand new truck.
You're right. Yeah. So even here have to watch these things with a critical eye. But at least you have footage which appears to be from that area. This whole topic of who is where will be a continual theme today. What also I found, which may be more fun or recent to watch, there is a guy which I had never watched before, literally by the name of Arab. He has a YouTube channel, but he's an American, and he's visiting them. And at least to him, maybe because he's male or whatever the reason is, the Afghanis are incredibly nice. They even talk to him about what it means to be a Taliban, which is like if I understand this correctly, like a student, basically, something like
Mhm.
this, which would be the real translation. Yeah, it's kind of interesting, but also I'm not sure if that guy, how should I say, whatever, it's like one of these huge channels, Arab, if you want to check it out, and he's like jokingly saying, oh look, here I went to be training or learning with them and so on. But yeah, it's interesting at least to see them sitting there together and then discussing about different things. What's also kind of funny is he mentions wherever he went in Afghanistan, of course, I guess he was only interacting with men. You even then have conversations where someone is asking, or he's asking, oh, what is this, how do you make this, or whatever, and one of the men is joking like, haha, do you think he knows? His wife puts it there, he has no clue about how to make food or something like this. Or it's not his domain, so you can maybe see some of these cultural things. Again, this is in this documentation made by this big YouTube channel, Arab. What you're showing now is just some other, let's say, mainline documentaries or whatever. And what you also have, what he mentions, which is quite interesting, is he says no matter where he went, basically everyone more or less tried to at least talk to him about Islam and the Quran. And I guess what would have excited them the most is if, or maybe has already, him even just, contemplating learning about it. And of course, then the ultimate thing would be considering to convert, right? Or reconvert, as they say in Islam. So yeah, I think that's kind of interesting that they're apparently actively proselytizing, at least to this particular guy, Arab, right? So people can check that out if they'd like. I actually want to see if I didn't even put his link there. Yeah, but you can easily find his channel because he's got like 1 million subscribers by the name of Arab. I'm seeing Andreas is briefly taking a break, so what I'll do is I'll share my own screen. I can show you some of the other videos that I selected for this. So, oh, you're already back.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay,
Fallout,
no
I can pull up the Syria one. Hold on.
No problem.
Quagmire, the Impossible Coalition against Daesh.
Yeah, so this is interesting because at least, whatever really happened on the ground, it gives some sort of a narrative as to how this happened with Syria. And I even found a documentary from 11 months ago, I think that's also on the list, where they already talk about, supposed rebel forces or whatever gathering and wanting to overthrow Assad. Because at least in mainstream media in Austria or Europe, all that we ever heard about it was 2 weeks before it happened, more or less, or even when it happened. So for European media, like mainstream, it's very much seemed very sudden, I would say. Although it was known maybe there is conflict there, whatever, but it wasn't that clear that, I guess, potentially Turkey or whoever else may have in some way, shape or form, let's just say, allowed this to happen. And of course, potentially other countries in the region. And what we already spoke about briefly, what I find curious, and this may actually be, I mean, now it's kind of more obvious with Trudeau and Nehammer, the Austrian chancellor, stepping down. Not that he himself for Austria is so incredibly important. In some ways it is. But this may simply be part of the changing of the guards, actually, now that we look at it with hindsight, let's say, and see that not only Syria is changing CEO or whatever background contract, but also Austria and Canada. So that maybe explains why this was going on this year.
It does feel like that. So this is pretty interesting. It looks like there's a pretty long history here. It's showing. That's great. All right, it's the Quagmire, and then this is about Captagon.
Right.
The drug.
We spoke about this before. The Panzerschokolade for the Syrians, and kind of interesting. Of course, here there's also different storylines as to why they produced it and so on. But it seems their economy was pretty shot for whatever reasons, and this was something that they fell back upon. Although I do have to wonder here again, if the trope is true that they had such good relations with Russia, wouldn't Russia have had some money or whatever to help them? And the other thing which is strange is that, at least from these mainland documentaries, many of the people say that for the last few years, the Assad regime deliberately siphoned off the resources and everything on extra speed, let's say, and basically, weren't paying even their own military properly and so on, which you obviously don't do if you want to keep power. So this is also questionable whether maybe there was a mid to long-term plan for this regime change, basically. Yeah, and everyone's playing their part.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people. There you go. A lot of these people were starving, and so by eating capsicum, it made it easier to to survive that kind of hunger. Really, which is a crazy thing to say, but that's what Partisan Girl, like Syria Girl, was using to justify it recently. Which I was like, wow, what a hot take spin. But yeah, it's pretty bad. It looks like. I mean, this documentary insinuates that if they had stopped for a month or so, 20 days or so, the sales of capsicum, then Syria's government's economy would have collapsed.
Right.
So
that's what they say. Yeah. And this is also what I just find so amazing. I mean, okay, at least one could say Syria is secularized, but just again, the infinite hypocrisy you can have, right? And then I'm sure this was technically banned or all kinds of things banned or whatever. And then at the same time, I mean, the only difference here, again, I would suggest is because it's not such a highly polished Western country, that the connections between the political overworld and the general underworld in Western countries can be more easily obfuscated because you have, nicer buildings, shinier clothes, and more people that you recruited and all of that. Whereas it seems in, countries like Syria, it's just, becomes readily apparent, also because, of course, now it is the time to publish that, because Assad's been stepping down and the regime is done for anyways. But yeah, the hypocrisy always, I think, is just amazing. The war on drugs, one of the most amazing hypocrisies ever created.
yeah, I wish though that it wasn't just a Breaking Bad Sharia. It could have been Syria with psychedelic. That would have been cool if they were making all the acid. That would have, I think, been a hot button topic. So if you're a dictatorship and you start making LSD, just know it might benefit you. And then here's a Rumble video, Syria, The Truth Uncensored, featuring Ghost of BPH on Alpha Warrior.
Yeah, this is just one more of the references I wanted to give, just because I always try to, deliver different perspectives. Honestly, I'm not sure if I watched this one, but I put it on the list because those are usually interesting comments, which may have a different type of perspective. This is even audio only, apparently. Is it possible? Or it's just not loading? But anyways, the Alpha Warrior is the show who does the shows with Gladio and with Colonel Towner Watkins, who again is interesting because she's reviewing the recent history through the lens of Gladio, and this can explain quite a few of the strange happenings, regime changes, and so on, where too often, let's say, some variant of these stay-behind armies, somehow strangely supported by alphabet soup or whatever else, actually have an integral part in changing things. And recently, for example, I spoke with David because now he's always saying, yeah, many people he feels are, how should I say, quite tribal and so on, and hold grudges even over many years. And he gave an example with Maidan, and I just said, well, you well know that, or I believe it is well known by now, that also Maidan was not a completely organic event, to put it mildly, and that actually you had active agents there as well, from everything I could gather so far, if the information is correct. And that of course amplified, the crisis and the chaos and so on, which again was literally planned for. So there's two aspects. The one thing is the long-term strategy, where you can then even engineer something organic by just having people become unhappy and all of that. And then, of course, you add a few agents that maybe drop a few shots or whatever else and obfuscate where they come from and all of this. And, you can have a revolution. Of course, you need, what's her name? Victoria Nuland and so on. I mean, these are all well-known things. I think the Duran spoke about these things at length. Yeah.
Legit. Also, Assad is geflohen. This is another German channel doing a podcast, or Austrian channel.
Right. Yeah, this is a German channel. This guy from who belongs to this channel, I didn't listen to him so much yet. He's kind of interesting. He's making the rounds on different alternative media. The guy on the left-hand side, or independent podcast. He's also talking about occultism, symbolism, and all of that. I'm not sure if I watched this one. Again, I just wanted to reference it if someone wants like a perspective from someone from Germany. I think, I mean, the way he looks, at least, I'm pretty sure he also has some kind of Eastern background, let's say. Yeah, but anyways, again, interesting story. Assad fleeing.
Right.
Yeah, was he
His
really
wife with
ever?
leukemia.
Was he ever really doing? That officially, some people say all of these guys are actors. What is known is that his brother initially was meant to be the president, right? And I watched one or two documentaries of like Assad's rise, and it's kind of funny or cute because his father kind of was buddies with the French president at the time, who was Jacques Chirac. And then he literally told, at least according to the documentary, again, I can believe that part, he was kind of like, oh, we're buddies, Syria and France, Jacques Chirac, please, won't you kind of take my son under your wing? Because, he wasn't the one educated to be a leader and to be kind of helped out by France. And at least 2-3 times they had like high profile visits between Syria and France. And also what's funny, this may be or interesting, if the story is correct, that initially when Bashar al-Assad took over, he basically gave a speech and said, oh, we have to make fundamental reforms. There's many things I don't agree with the corruption and this and that. And basically then within 2 years, it seems that the high-level remaining administrators, military, and so on kind of got to him and maybe told him, well, that's not the way things go around here, son. You can be head of state, but maybe there's some things you cannot change or you are not supposed to be changing. And then none of these reforms came through. There were some demonstrations back then. Apparently, if that is correct, even people being imprisoned for many years. But basically, none of the fundamental reforms being carried out. But then even having a delegation come from France on the request of, I guess, Assad. This was during the time of Nicolas Sarkozy, if I remember correctly. And he sent like 2 ambassadors. Assad was very nice to them, showed them everything. They provided a quite detailed report in terms of how to reduce corruption and all of that. And even here, I have to wonder, with what I just mentioned before, in terms of the West just being more polished and making it appear more apart. I would really love to know, what these ambassadors really wrote down, like what the recommendations were for real, or even what their own mindset was, if they were aware themselves that it appears, unfortunately, almost all governments on some level are involved in some type of shady business and not perfectly legal or approved actions. But in any case, it seems
Terrible,
that
isn't
Syria,
it?
it seems that Syria did not, or Assad did not implement any of these changes. And yeah, then it was basically reverted to a basic dictatorship with people not really having a lot or being very well taken care of, from what I could glean through these few hours of documentaries, right?
And where's the cool picture? They just had it up as like 118 or something like that. No, is it 120? Like, here we go, 138. With this, I mean, this is just, there's a playbook, at very least, but it's just, is this the man you want to emulate? I'm just saying, it's ridiculous. Hey, so that was Syria. Then we could look at some of the TFE fallout, which you might know is talking about the final experiment, and that's the name of a show, not an actual thing. So we're going to look at that for a second, just to remind people what it is. But hold on, let me open some of these up because there's just a slew of these. Oh my gosh,
there's too many.
It's a lot.
Actually,
no, it's not your fault. This is actually a testament. This is a testament to what has been going on. Is that one group made this sort of nonsensical claim, and then everyone has to comment on it because this is kind of the thing. They've generated so much
Because it's a
interest in
psyop.
themselves.
That's why
This guy,
everyone has to talk about it.
it's look at it. Look at it. This is all everyone's a seismograph, that lightning rod. So this one is
But this is
a
funny.
video
Now I'm realizing because
Nachiketa
the
has.
first song, only now I'm getting it. The first song is by Tom Petty, whom I didn't know, honestly. He made a song called Full Moon, and someone on my end of the channel, I was rebroadcasting this with Nachiketa, made a comment and something about, I miss Tom Petty or whatever. And I was even confused because I don't know this artist. And I asked if he meant Don Petit, who is one of the famous NASA astronauts who's always, I don't know, doing flips and looking cross-eyed, or I'm not sure what to say about this guy, looking traumatized, basically. So I thought they were referring to Don Petit, but this is kind of funny that there is a Tom Petty with a moon song, and there is a current day famous astronaut actor, as I would say, with the name of Don Petit, which in itself is a bit of a strange name. What is the Don? The Don is like, what is the translation of Don? They also called it Donald the Don, right? Like mafia, whatever. And Petit means small in French. So the astronaut is a small mafia boss. I'm not sure how to translate this. Anyhow, so we can move on to the TFE fallout. So the final experiment, I think you summarized it well. Actually, if anyone is looking at the links I provided here, best thing to do, I mean, look at some of the links, it's too much to watch everything, I guess, but also definitely just look at the channels that I refer to. I'm not making any claims or vouch for any of those, but basically look at their more recent videos as well, because what it appears to be here is kind of also like a back and forth. So aside from all kinds of circumstantial things being strange, starting with the idea that they wanted to do a 24-hour sun observation in Antarctica, and the claim was by the originators of the experiment, Will Duffy, who claims that he got the inspiration from God to do this experiment. His God is Yahweh, by his own definition. I'm quoting him here. But he kind of claimed that this would be the ultimate and final experiment to determine the shape of the Earth, which of course, even logically, is quite an interesting idea. How can an observation of the sky determine the shape or curvature or whatever else of the Earth? It's a little bit strange. The only thing that maybe could be done would be falsifications of very particular models. I talked about this on previous shows. But anyways, now what you have...
Why is he doing this? Why is he at a 24-hour title for a 25-minute video? How do you show us that this is a 24-hour?
Please don't ask questions like this, because many people that, especially on the, let's say, honest research side, of course, were kind of expecting, if they say, oh, we're going down there, we're going to film a 24-hour sun, and they knew they will have Starlink there, so internet access, which supposedly is new, which I honestly cannot possibly believe, because you really want to tell me you have a research station there for years and years and years, and they don't have some sort of broadband internet access, even just to convey whatever sensor data or whatever they have. And they're not going to do that on dial-up either, I mean, that would be ridiculous. And to think that they would be there for so many years and not have more infrastructure, I find it suspicious in itself. And aside from that, of course, the one thing that was released immediately, also by Dave McKeegan here, was a 1-minute time lapse. Then it took, I don't know how long to release this longer footage. Now another one who went by the name of Jaron released like 6-hour GoPro on his channel, which is all nice and good. But if you know the contentiousness of the topic, and even if you're, let's say, on the NASA side, how quote unquote paranoid and conspiratorial and so on all these crazy Earth-shaped researchers are, then you should know that nothing less would be accepted than a literal 24-hour live stream to start with. And this would still be, dissected and criticized, but that would be like the level 1 if you want to have credibility in terms of evidence. I don't know if that will be delivered at all. Actually, honestly, I don't even think so. And the other thing is, aside from many strange social factors going on and potential irregularities in the footage, it's just quite strange why they're taking weeks and weeks to release things, again, when it was known that people would be very suspicious of this. So even if I'm coming from the side where they are claiming this should be the final proof, then they should know that, how do you call it? The admissibility of evidence or whatever for the group you claim you want to convince, which would be everyone who is not convinced of the NASA model, is pretty high bar, if you catch my drift, right? So these are just the very basic ideas about the whole thing. Now it went down. I can only encourage everyone looking into this to... What's the problem? Well, Andreas, tell us what the problem is.
I was going to ask you the same thing. So, do you want to explain why we're looking for a 24-hour sun? I mean, this is what in the video with Nachiketa we actually talk about this a little bit. But why
Yes,
is
of
this
course.
why is this proof that in the beginning in the first place?
So, if anyone wants to have the information from like a week ago, where many things then progressed further, people making different arguments about irregularities, you can kindly watch the 3.5 hours I did with Nachiketa and with Andreas. We talk about quite a few of those things. But yeah, what is the main issue? The main issue is that the individuals that created this experiment claim it will prove that the Earth is a globe, basically, in terms of NASA model. And many individuals simply do not agree that even if there was a verifiable, provable 24-hour sun at that particular location, that would not change the curvature of the Earth. But this is kind of how it is being set up. And I'm pretty sure all of you in chat pretty soon will see some sort of a Netflix documentary or something made about this. So this is just a heads up, and everyone who wants to know the details, both in terms of potential technical irregularities and social strangeness going on here, and potential strange individuals being involved, who also unfortunately give off very strange symbolism, not only once. You can check out some of those videos, and again, just recommend it to just go to the channels themselves and see the most recent ones, because there is an ongoing back and forth discussion with, you know, different claims being made, different analyses being made, more footage being released, which also kind of lets me to believe that they deliberately only released very little footage in the beginning to also have researchers make false claims. I think one of their plans was to have people jump the gun, which kind of happened. And then they can be like, oh, you're so dumb, you researcher, because now we're showing you more footage, which can easily disprove the claim that you made, which you only made because the first footage we provide was just super flimsy and almost nothing at all. And we deliberately kept that like this for weeks. So the other, let's say, conspiracy is that this was done deliberately also in a sense to wait for the commentary of any researchers so that they can make sure that any future footage they release will be proved against this criticism and potentially further edited or manipulated. Again, this is just a conspiracy, but I want to throw that out there. And yeah.
Well, here's also just, you know, yeah, you can make up your own mind about Will Duffy, the guy who's doing this. You can look at his face.
All I'll say is that it's very public knowledge that he became a millionaire at the age of 33. Yeah, you have this military to millionaire, which, you know, if you know anything about Mr. Beast or whoever else, is not suspicious at all, right? Yeah,
kind of crazy. Military to millionaire.
Insurance
so you go look
guy.
into him if you want to know about the guy, the insurance salesman who's also an active agent for the National Treasury. So, okay, look into him. Did you want to listen to some of the audio from that clip?
Say that. No, wait, I'm not sure. Let's see again. Oh
no, keep going. Well, just to say that, continue.
I just wanted to say basically the way you summarize it may be the best thing. Whatever this means exactly, active agent for the Treasury. You know, maybe that's a good description.
I think it might be.
Right. Yeah, so here what you have is you have Eddie Bravo and Sam Tripoli, whom you've also interviewed with, right? On the Tinfoil Hat podcast, I guess is his podcast, right? Here they have a brief discussion. I want to say unfortunately, but maybe it's good. All these guys, they don't really know what went down there. And when they recorded it, they don't really have any clues about the criticism that was being produced. So they are not topical in that sense. However, what is interesting is Eddie Bravo simply says, look, they are fudging some kind of art project, let's say, with the supposed ISS every day. So then why is it impossible to believe that through whatever unknown technology, combination of technologies, you know, editing, montage editing, as I learned from you, the Soviet style, you know, you show certain things, you don't show certain things, selective things, sleight of hand, and then maybe accusations, some social engineering, and all of that. But all that Eddie Bravo is saying, well, he firmly believes, which I also tend to believe, the ISS is a huge art project for which they spare no expense. So if that is only remotely relevant, then why should it not be possible to also, in whatever way, shape, or form, engineer something here? And it's also suspicious because quite a few researchers wanted to go last year. And then apparently some people said, no, don't go, wait till 2024. So it really seemed like this was a particular thing and particularly important that this would happen this December. And only circumstantial also, but what's also a bit strange is that on the Facebook page of Antarctic Logistics and Expedition, aside from them being a Salt Lake City, Utah company, people make up their own minds about that, and a highly restricted, of course, thing to be there. Yeah, it's strange, and also the different packages they offer, and also that they have a flying penguin as their logo. You mentioned to me, penguins don't fly. It is known, even you can look it up on Freimaurer Wiki, Freemason Wiki, the German version, the Lodge 777 in Antarctica. And also, I didn't catch it at the beginning. I was wondering, because you have the marathon footage, which apparently happened at the same time. And I'm not sure if they do that with every marathon, or let me put it to you like this. Is there a particular type of music that they would play at the beginning of a marathon? Generically speaking,
Yeah.
Are you aware of anything like that?
Yeah, the Chariots of Fire intro from the guy from that, what's his name, Vangelis or something? Yeah. You know what I'm talking about? Instantly. So Vangelis, who was in Aphrodite's Child and made all the music for Evangelos Odysseus, Papathanasia. He's the coolest Greek musician. And he made a
I'm aware of him.
movie soundtrack for Antarctica in 1983, actually, too. But because he does that song from Chariots of Fire. Na 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 na. Dun, 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 dun. It's a whole
Okay,
thing.
so in this, thank you for answering. In this case, what they did, interestingly enough, they were playing like bagpipes. This do 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 do. These
Okay.
Scottish or whatever they are, right? Which sounds really cool. You know what I mean? I believe this is a Scottish thing. Is that correct, Andreas?
Yeah, bagpipes are for sure.
Bagpipes?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Well, technically, it depends how you look at it. Celts play bagpipes because the Romans brought the bagpipes to the Celtic Islands, and probably they came from Africa, right? Because
And then I'm just like to know why at the marathon that they did in Antarctica, they were playing these bagpipes, I guess at the start or something. And
Scottish, right? That makes sense.
Andreas, you're so fast.
Sorry.
No, very good. Exactly.
Well, because you're talking about the lodge, it's
circumstantial.
actually...
Of course.
We should show people more.
And then, of course, is the question
Make sure
whether this marathon there is really as open to everyone as they make it appear. I mean, probably you can go there if you have the money. I'm sure they gladly take your money, right?
$60,000 for like a week. I think you found, right? What's the name of that site? Did you pull it up? Where was that?
I don't have it. It's Antarctic Logistics and Expedition.
Yeah. There you go. Ale. This is the picture of this little freaking thing, and I think you said that they're out of Salt Lake City, right? Which is just like, come on, yo, that's hilarious. Like Salt Lake, so Mormon involvement, it brings it to another level. Pretty fun. Look at that flying penguin. Something's wrong with that. Well, but in this process, you forced me to realize that Vangelis did a soundtrack for Antarctica, a movie about Antarctica, which I've never seen, and now I will have to do. The 1958 ill-fated Japanese scientific expedition to the South Pole. Is that crazy or what? The Japanese in 1958 were trying to go to the South Pole, and they were not. It's failed. They're calling it, right? So I got to wonder about this. It seems really interesting to me, and I want to know what the soundtrack is that they did for Vangelis did for this. Whoa! Disney adapted the plot. Disney adapted the plot into 8 Below. What? A remake of with Paul Walker, who was murdered. Paul Walker from Fast and the Furious and Tammy and the T-Rex.
Oh,
So they remade Antarctica by Toshiro Ishido. That's crazy. To be about, the film is set in Antarctica, but was filmed in Greenland. Okay. All right. It's kind of based. All right. So let's see here.
oh yeah, and also just to bring it up, because we had mentioned this previously, the Antarctica flag itself, of course, is curious because it's one of the only flags, along with Cyprus, I believe, and maybe Kosovo, I'm not sure now, that actually has their official shape, let's say, or
Yeah.
propaganda shape on the map or on the flag.
Yeah. Pretty
And
correct.
of course, I mean, even it'd be funny to just, and I wish that we could completely disregard symbolic and circumstantial evidence like this, but even anyone can just go on Google Maps and check out this region, like of Antarctica and so on, and just read how the islands are called. Yeah, you have things like Rothschild Island, Deception Island. Like, please, why?
Well, then you got this guy who catapulted to 3.85 million subscribers now. The Ordinary Gamer.
Yeah, so here the main issue, and this is, if anyone is daring, let's say, to look into this, if you haven't already, the big issue, of course, here is everyone who's discussing this Earth-shaped topic is coming with their own bias. I won't even necessarily exclude myself from that, but at the very least, I try to the best of my abilities to understand arguments from both sides and so on, understand what I can verify myself. But then very often, of course, you have quite high-profile individuals simply slamming something without necessarily even understanding the nuances and differentiation. And then you have, of course, fans, and instead of coming back and be like, oh, there is this and this and this factor, maybe you also may want to discuss, not even talking about changing opinions. You know, everyone can
Did
do
he
what
just
they
use
want.
the Quran? He just used the Quran to say that the world's a ball. Is that what he did just now?
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, very good. That's a good example. Thank you for pointing that out. Because at least, and this is only, of course, relayed information from what I understand through David Ewing Jr., the way he showed this to me, because we had talked about this, is that the Quran actually allows, in the current version or the current interpretations, it allows for both. So that's not exactly clear. And again, here, as we understand, it is important to look at the exact translations. It is important to look at the differences between written and oral Quran to actually understand that Arabic that is being spoken there. So there's 100 million things why I cannot just randomly pull out a Quran translation and put it there. And I'm pretty sure, actually, if you would look a bit, you could probably find variants where it would point towards the other direction. So, yeah.
Interesting that they. I find it interesting that that's where he goes with this one. You know, it's kind of funny. I haven't seen this video yet, but I feel like he's going to be pretty much an anti-flat earther. Is that?
Oh yeah, I think that's pretty much what it is. Maybe scroll down a bit. I just want to see how many views there are, or maybe some interesting comments.
500,000. Yeah, 500,000 views and 7,000 comments. This guy says he doesn't believe Hawaii exists.
I don't believe that Hawaii exists, or
if anyone wants to send me there for 3 weeks so I can debunk this myth, I'd be happy to put my credibility on the line. Nice.
So then basically you just have low bar ad hominem comments, which are not necessarily further, because for me, honestly, I do not necessarily care what the shape is or if we find a curve or this or that, but I just don't want it to be based on hearsay and trust me, bro, and oh, someone on a remote place somewhere, whether the ISS or Antarctica or whatever, which I cannot possibly verify, is claiming something, and I'm supposed to change my complete worldview based on the claim from a far remote location that doesn't even provide proper evidence and documentation the way it would be appropriate. I just don't find that acceptable. But of course, too often the discussion on both sides, of course, or all sides, devolves into ad hominems and all of that. So especially for those who really want to know, I can only encourage you to keep a cool head. Just look at the information And I'm pretty sure
Inner,
actually also
Inner
this.
Void, we're just talking about the issue because the flat Earth, the final experiment is a flat Earth subject. So we're just saying that in this particular subject about the flat Earth experiment that they're looking at Antarctica, that the experiment seems very shady the way it's done. And I think it was pretty clear. Raphael just said he's not interested necessarily in what the shape of the Earth is. That was how he started that. It's
I mean,
more.
I'm interested, but I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah,
bound to any model or anything. I just would like to
yeah.
know, or I would like to glean the few things that can be known. And then if someone comes along and sets up an experiment, which I can understand is not doing what
Right.
it's supposed to do, but has heavy propaganda value behind it, then I'm like, guys, watch out. There's something strange going on here. And anyone actually, not to be definitely not Eric Dubé, and anyone who's not looked into this topic yet at all, I can just encourage you. There's plenty links I put from both sides, yeah, and then really just you can only make up your own mind. There are a few technical things people can discuss and so on, and again, it's important to differentiate the, let's say, physical evidence or demonstration experiment evidence and the social, circumstantial, symbolic evidence.
Right. Dubé did a pretty
But
cool
yeah.
video here, the final experiment fakery, where it kind of shows how Hollywood makes movies now. You know, it's this whole conversation. The point is that so much content was generated because of this, and you know, by people
Yes.
we know.
And also,
Conspiracy
it was
music theory.
immediately published. Maybe you want to pull this up briefly because that's what most people saw of it. If you enter Le Parisien and Flat Earth or something like this, Le Parisien, Flat Earth, immigrés, immigrants. Yes.
Oh yeah, here, yeah.
So this was the thing that was immediately released, and the part
Million
of
views, right?
the research crew that went there along with this guy said, well, you know, it's not going to happen because there is a Netflix documentary called Behind the Curve. Unfortunately, this is for many people all the extent of the information they have about the Earth-shaped topic, which is woefully insufficient because a Netflix documentary is a Netflix documentary. To anybody who didn't know yet, Edward Bernays, the nephew of Sigmund Freud, is the author of a book called Propaganda. You know, the conscious or whatever deliberate steering of the masses is a necessity, and democracy basically is a veneer, is what he says in short. And Bernays' grandson is the current CEO of Netflix. So just everyone consider how much they are actually interested in delivering you proof or a truth, let's say, or information, and how much they're interested in delivering you narrative. So it very much seems as if a new documentary will be made. I mean, this is actually official. And also, the guys that went there said, oh, we're going to have the final edit, quote unquote, to be sure that, you know, they will not be misrepresented and all of that. However, if you then have a 2-minute clip like that, which gets pushed to all the major media outlets and gets millions of views, then it doesn't even necessarily matter whether they have final edits, rights, or whatever, because most people, if they didn't look into this, they will just run with a 1-minute statement of someone saying, oh, I'm confused now. I was believing it's this model. Now this what I'm supposedly observing here is falsifying my model. Yeah, and basically just make anyone who's interested in the topic look stupid. And I think that is not helping the conversation. Everyone should be interested, and as they always like to say, truth does not fear investigation. So yeah, that's my view on that thing.
Excellent. And then there was also some other content here. This is about Saturday Night Live UAP psyops. Oh, I guess this is kind of still on that subject, but just the idea of psyops to that delivery. And then we got into Stargate, Stagecraft Explained, Kenobi, Fett. And then, okay, now the Turks of South Carolina. Because Old World Florida, who we love very much. I think he's a wonderful man. Here is his video talking about, you know, if you haven't seen everything he's done, which you should, he talks about Atlantis in Florida, which is interesting considering Disney wanting to build Disney World in Florida and trying to build that Epcot city in the shape of Atlantis. It seems like it's a lot of people have already thought about this, and he's just exposed so much proof of this. And I really hope you've seen a lot of the videos where he shows that. But there's an interesting connection between Turkey, and he talks about that here. It looks like he even goes into the Thanksgiving, Sir Francis Drake, the Turks in North Carolina. It looks like a pretty interesting video for you to see. It's only 40 minutes long. Too.
There's dark-skinned individuals.
Yeah, there are. It's true. There are people of different colors. Here's the map. Barbarians, New Prussia, Japonica. Yeah. Yeah.
And then the top it says barbarians. That's sweet.
Well, if the shoe fits, if the bra fits, right? And then Turconia is Florida down there, right? So,
wow.
This is a map from, I forget now. We've talked about it before, but it's like in Time magazine or Life magazine or something like that. They made this map in about 150 years ago or 100 years ago now. The Florida Turkish Center. And yeah, there are tons of people in Louisiana and Florida that were Lebanese, Syrian, Arabic, and of course, Turkic. Of course. So, the question about Florida is, what is the true history? How far does it go back? Why is it converted to being so? I mean, America, we have this idea that what Arabs are, what Turks are, what the Middle Easterns or what race people are compared to their shared culture if they're doing trade networks. So a very important video. Highly recommend.
I'm very glad you pulled it up. I can totally believe I bookmarked it, but I don't see it on the list or how. Oh, there we got there. Okay. Oh, right. This was just somewhere which I dropped in the wrong place, I guess. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Oh, that's good.
Yeah, definitely. It's only 40 minutes, so you guys should watch the whole thing. All right. And then Firmament Trackers, Flat Earth app.
And this is just a new app, also because people already years ago actually have revealed there's quite a few issues apparently with the Flat Earth Moon and Clock, Sun and Moon Clock app by Dave Weiss. That basically it seems that the noon position is correct, but there's all kinds of other questions or issues. So I was just posting that because it's just different variants of modelings. People who are interested can take a look at it themselves and see what makes sense. I just found it, interesting for anyone who wants to look more into the physics or what could be feasible. Of course, a model is always only a model, but it can be interesting to look at.
Yeah. And then the more of these Mandalorian virtual set stuff.
Yes. All these videos.
This is how big this was. Everyone pushing about
and
this.
You have to imagine with every of the claims then made, there's always a back and forth, which also is an interesting social experiment. But again, as I mentioned initially, I very much believe they deliberately only released little information at the beginning to make researchers look silly, because understandably, with some things, they would jump the gun and it turns out wrong. But to me, honestly, that shouldn't matter as long as people are honest. And then they can say, for example, also I said, I can imagine with this, they had a drone, right? And first it seemed like from a certain angle, the drone had a proximity sensor and it was out in the open field. It looked like from that perspective, and it rang like crazy, which would suggest something nearby. And I said, I can imagine an LED screen being a meter away, God knows. But now you have footage released by TFE, which shows like 5 or 6 angles. And at least for that particular, 3 minutes or however long they flew the drone, makes it look legit and makes it appear as if, yes, the drone is registering correctly. And it's all, how should I say? There is no proximity sensor. Yes?
Well, how about this one too? Because I know you'd randomly
I'll get there.
Yes,
I'll get there in a second. So I just want to explain basically with some of these things, like with the drone and so on, there are then explanations as more information is released. But again, number one, I expect they deliberately release certain information to lead people down the wrong path and make wrong assumptions. Yeah. But then also, even here, it seems to keep going because there still is a back and forth. And what I had mentioned in regards to the drone, everyone can check out the drone footage themselves. Maybe they release a ton more. I'd be happy for it. But at least the snippet they showed, and now it's already weeks gone, was basically them flying the drone 10 meters. I mean, you saw the footage, right? I was not very impressed by that. And it also seems very illogical to me that if I'm in an amazing new place, I'm going to fly
this little
as high as possible, around as possible. I'm going to do as much footage as possible. not just for the thing itself, but even if maybe I want to sell it as stock footage or whatever, I mean, it's
Yeah.
amazing, right?
It
But
should be worth like so much
strangely,
money
that
to have actual
wasn't
footage of
was not
Antarctica.
I don't know, I haven't seen it yet, at least. So we have open questions here. All right. Yeah, this is something, of course, which we're all excited about in a way.
Well, let me walk you back, because people are probably wondering
Yes,
why we
please.
care. But Pope Pius and the Nazis is kind of an interesting relationship, and that the Americans, I think this came up because the fact that the Nazis and the Catholics had such a close relationship has been questioned by everyone, and it's always something that I think should be looked into a little bit deeper, right? Having said that, then you look at, we were watching Why We Fight, Frank Capra, Why We Fight, which was a U.S. military film, prelude to war, but also something made by Frank Capra. So the Jesuit connection there, very much a Jesuit making propaganda, not just for the military, also doing the wonders of science for the Bell Labs Science Hour. So there's something to this idea that the Vatican was moving its trust from Germany to the United States. And it's interesting to imagine that, because you have this fear of socialists leading to atheism or paganism or something that doesn't really leave the Catholic Church in charge anymore. And so they completely manipulate and change their footing, right? And so the word Ignatius, like Ignatius Loyola, being connected to an early terminology for this German group, right? Because you have to imagine the way we look at this, what time this was, or they weren't really called Nazis. Right? This is an Americanism or a diminutive phrase for the Workers' Party, for the NADSAP party. But to say that Knots like Ignatius, that nickname, so these are all the Ignatians, is an interesting thought, that they were perhaps originally Ignatian Catholics or Vatican loyalists or Jesuit loyalists.
Yes, of course, there is the recurring question whether our dear mustache man actually wrote the book that's now still, today we talk about everything that's banned, right? The book is still banned in Germany and Austria, from what I understand. Which is kind of funny if it's actually written by a Jesuit, right? Why should a Jesuit literature, it always depends which side of the coin you're supposed to be on. But however, I believe it is allowed to be purchased or to be used in a very certain educational sense or something. Like there is some, they have some allowance for it on some certain way. Same with the symbolism, I believe. But yeah, I don't know. I would be lying.
Well, they also say that the Catholics
now, but yes,
they say that Ignatz was also is a colloquialism for foolish person, which I think is interesting as well. If you think about what that means about the relationship with the Roman Empire, the Holy Roman Empire, which is neither holy nor Roman or an empire, right? But it's more like this Lutheran place that's controlled by the Catholic Church. So I can see that being something about the Jesuits after the Jesuit suppression being in a Lutheran state. It seems like an interesting thing.
A basic argument here is, I mean, people have heard about all this Vril society and all the strange backgrounds and what are the occult forces and, American support and whoever else, the whole world building up to then break it down and all of that. Yeah, but this is also an open question, to what extent the Jesuits or Catholic Church were involved in engineering and supporting that. With Germany's best,
I think that's the question. That's a good question.
And
Probably
also
the Easterns.
Because the Jesuits, from what I understand, at least the pattern is the same pattern that was more or less copied by the Freemasons and all kinds of other societies, just in terms of how do you create a strict top-down structure for command and control. And also in a way, even if I wanted to say who has the most expertise. So even if, let's say, someone would be in the 1930s or 1920s, let's say earlier 1910s, thinking about how can I make sure that this this party and the mustache man will rise, then even just on a very logical, practical thing, I need the best experts to like teach me how do I build such a system, right? Such a militarized order. And then again, we can look into homoeroticism or whatever else with the SS and all these things. But again, I think it would be bold to be certain that there is no connection at all. Again, especially if he actually got assistance from the church in some capacity, or the Jesuits, in writing his book, which of course then became the big thing, which I guess for Germany became, or the whole, everything they conquered and occupied became like a Bible, right? Like everyone had to have it and read it. So
Yeah, like a little red book at least. A Quran, like a Quran, written by one person allegedly. So yeah, here's one of our favorite people, Mephistopheles, decoding the Palatines. He put this out about 8 days ago, and he's talking about the mysterious ethnic groups out of Germany, their role in history, and many trials they faced. Who are the Palatines in the context of new chronology? What are their connections to the Dutch, the Moors, the Swiss, and the Templar? I really like Mephistopheles. He's one of my favorite people. So I hope you guys have time to check this video out.
We got this, and also on his channel, there's a more recent upload just from today, together with Pirate, where they talk more about this. So anyone who's interested in deep dives here, definitely check it out.
Right, it's definitely going to roll pretty deep, because he's going to look at the official history and then explain it in new chronology, which is great that he does both. He's able to break it down in a really good way. Also, ABC special news report.
This quote about the capacity to hold diverging thoughts or two models at the same time is like the hallmark of intelligence. And I always thought this was attributed to like whatever, Einstein or something. Most recently, I saw like Ella Fitzgerald or someone like that. I'm like, even here, you know, they love to switch around with the quotes, like who said what or whatever. But that's certainly something I agree with. And especially if someone is looking into these contentious topics, history or earth shape or whatever else, really try as much as you can to just, you know, run with both models. You know, it's okay not to know and not to be perfectly certain, but only if I can have two or more models or ideas, or just be open, then I have a chance to actually realize reality. Because if I have only preset definitions, it's very easy to fall into all kinds of traps. That's all I can say about that. Yeah, special report. What kind of special report?
Well, let's do this one first. What's this?
Kauf auf keinen Fall ein altes Haus in Japan. So I just brought this up. It says, under no circumstances buy an old house in Japan. And why is that? So maybe some of you have seen, I guess it's somewhat popular on Facebook or maybe on other platforms too. Sometimes you have these adverts which say, oh, look, there is a house in Japan in some kind of village or something. And of course, it's always close to some national park or shrine, because, you know, everything is in some way, shape, or form, right? But let's say in a rather low infrastructure area. But the real issue is, so, and these houses seem very cheap, like 30K or even less. And this guy even explains there's quite a few people that even want to give it away for free. But why is that? And that's also kind of strange and suspicious, because apparently in Japan for the past 50 years or whatever, they deliberately built in a way that the houses only last 40 years. So by the time a Western then it would be consider getting that, it's only because all the Japanese know it's basically just a money sink. So that's only worth it if you really love the location and want to build your own house, or you have tons of money to do like a spectacular renovation. But the way he relays it, it really seems like, how should I say that? They build like, I mean, they don't build out of styrofoam or whatever, but how would you say that? Like
pretty close.
Planned obsolescence from the start, basically.
Yeah, you're not expecting to live in a house for more than one generation, because it would be creepy. You know, they believe in ghosts and stuff in Japan. They don't want to have weird. They don't like it. They like to tear down the thing, which is pretty funny.
Much for ancestor worship. That's a bit strange.
Yeah, yeah, right. Kind of weird, huh? You can have your ancestor worship outside. Keep it outside. Jimmy Carter croaks at 100. The obituary you won't hear anywhere else. Yeah, I hope that this is. I mean, I kind of felt like we could have gone super hard against this guy right before he died, because it was so obvious he was about to die, and it would have been a good time to be like, hey, before he dies, because we don't want to be rude about a dead guy, because, you know, it is whatever, going after a dead guy. Like, I get it, you know, but while he's still alive, can we still just call him out on his bullshit? Because, like, oh my God, this dude is so evil. Like, all he did was cause trouble. And everyone pretends he's this nice guy because he's spending the rest of his life trying to atone for it by building houses for the poor after creating the poor. I mean, what? Shut up. Are you kidding me? I never liked Jimmy Carter. I'm never going to pretend to like Jimmy Carter. He's the reason why women wear headdresses. Billions of women wear headdresses and are raped. I mean, I will blame him for that straight up. Cool. I'm done. Islam. He's the reason. He's more important to the spread of Islam than Muhammad. All right.
Possible, yes. So here, I guess this guy is just showing, different symbology and so on surrounding that. Also, it's of course very strange that the guy lived to 100, right? And I'm sure he's bringing up more circumstantial and strange ideas surrounding all of that. I just found it interesting because it recently happened. Iran, yeah. Yeah, not
Iran
wrong.
will be free in 6 months.
And also, anyone who's interested in that, you can check out a video on my channel called, I believe it's History, or no, it's Scam. It's called The Scam. It's on my videos. It's one of the presentations with David Ewing Jr. And there he specifically also refers to the Ayatollah Khomeini and shows, when he arrived, there was a parade of like 19 miles and he made a program of 19 points and something like this. So it's like hardcore 19 coding. Anyone who knows David Ewing Jr.'s works knows 19 is one of these factors, which also is related in the Quran, where they warn you against the 19. So yeah, this is additional information for people who are interested.
Yeah, even if Paranoid American and Dr. Longo at one point had some sort of a vegan tirade at each other, and like this is the issue basically. I'll say for anybody who's having trouble like emotionally or depressed, eat a steak. But there's no problem with Dr. Longo and Paranoid American. Not really. It's okay. Let's all be happy for
and
them.
in terms of, vegan or not, all I can honestly say, what's very important, what is easily overlooked if someone wants to be vegetarian or vegan, is to have enough high quality fats. These can be from, nuts, coconut, and all kinds of other things. That's really, like, fat is super important for the brain and all of that. And
True.
that's certainly something you don't want to be lacking. I won't make claims now whether animal or the other is superior. Please figure this out for yourself. But just basically, if you reduce meat or whatever, it's certainly relevant. Make sure you have enough fat intake, high quality.
Eat as much fat as you can get. Live off that biodiesel. All right, an open letter to open-minded progressives. What's this about? I haven't seen this.
Yeah, I think this is something I just, pulled out from somewhere. Maybe we'll bookmark it again and take a proper look at it. I guess it's one of, right, no, I think this is something someone pointed out in chat or whatever and said like, oh, this seems to be an important document. Maybe we just look at the first paragraph. It will explain itself.
Let's see. It says in chapter 1, we looked at the 3 anomalies in progressive political thought, a surprising definition of the word independence, and oscillatory ambivalence around the concept of nationalism, and a chiral gradient in sensitivity to human rights violations. These particular anomalies are not just progressive. They are, in fact, modern. They're generally shared across the conservative progressive spectrum. They're even shared by most libertarians, except maybe the Randians, who have epistemic trouble of their own. They are simply as close to universal as it comes. Okay. YouTube clips.
So I guess this is something we'll have to read through, but this was one of the things where I was like, oh, I'm sure you'd be interested in this. So if we ever get around to this, we can look deeper into that. Unfortunately, I believe I forgot like from which chat I got this, but it was like, oh, this looks interesting, right?
Oh yeah, and then this Drew Binsky guy, he went to Bulgaria and spent time in. He says he spent time in the largest gypsy slum. Okay, that's a fun way to put it.
Apparently, there is this district.
What's the definition of a slum?
Well, you define it.
I
guess here it's about being quote unquote dilapidated or apparently lower living standards seen from a Western point of view in terms of infrastructure and so on.
Highly populated urban residential area. Okay.
Well put. Yeah, so of course the Romani, or colloquially called Gypsy, are a very interesting group because
Mm-hmm.
they are one of the groups that, for various reasons, are not interested in, let's say, actively participating in the state, maybe in the
Yeah.
way others are. So even just from that point of view, they're an interesting case study. And what also has to be said, it is not exactly clear because there's both, positive and negative stereotypes. And we always have to look at the history and also maybe at the background dealings. For example, when people say, oh, they have some strange customs and so on, is always the question, who put them up to it? Because if you are a marginalized group at the, border of society, could be easy for someone to come along and be like, oh, I'm the local government or whatever, don't you want to do my dirty work? Then they get a bad rap, but it's only maybe because they were excluded from other, regular means of employment or whatever else, or regular integration into society. Yeah, I've
This
never
looks like a
been
great
there,
place to live.
but
This
yeah,
is exactly where I'd like to be. Like, look how chill
it's
it
like
is.
a free town.
Yeah, I like the look of it. Current situation update from New Earth.
Yeah, so this is Sylvie Ivanova, who was the individual that for very initially turned me onto the whole Tartaria thing. Now,
Yeah, I've been
she
here
loves
recently.
talking about prophecies and impending doom. I honestly didn't watch the whole thing because, I mean, I'm well aware. But I just wanted to show that anyone maybe who is interested in what Sylvie Ivanova has to say, she recently did an update. But yeah, I think
Awesome.
overall it's too gloomy to me, or doomy, not to say that these are not all real agendas, and not to say that we shouldn't properly align ourselves, but also rather do something positive than only look at all the prophecies and so on of how the world should be enslaved. So at least I'll relay this here. According to David Ewing Jr., he stated multiple times that also due to the recent history and recent conflicts, let's say of the past 100 years or something, that actually there are supposedly, even on the higher levels, two sides. So one side that literally wants the new world order enslave everyone, and the other side that actually has some interest in releasing technology and in some way, shape, or form helping people to be, how do you call it, emancipated? Not emaciated, but emancipated. But of course, in the end, it will all depend on you and me and everyone listening and the general population as to what they accept or not. Because even with the governments, even with democracies, dictatorships, whatever it is, if a new rule, a new law, a new whatever is given, and 90%, maybe even 50% say they don't agree with it and just don't comply, I want to see how long that law is upheld, or if it is even passed, if it's known that people don't agree. So that's always where the power lies with each and every one. This I want to bring up. So this Anton Petrov guy is interesting because he is associated with a group called Creative Society. They also have their own dogmas and so on, I want to say, not necessarily subscribing to them. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I've been very interested in mitochondria for a long time, and generally the topic of energy production. Short advert, anyone who's interested, check out the link below about garlic and Xirtus. That's one of the things that relates to this whole idea. Basically, the question, what is health really? And one of the most important things is electricity and voltage and energy availability within the body, which chemically, in our current model at least, is represented, amongst other things, by ATP, adenosine triphosphate, right? And then also very much related to oxygen supply within the body and all of that. And why I like to bring this up is because if we look at these, let's say, core factors, we may be able to understand more easily how certain therapies, supplements, or whatever else, exercises actually assist the body, because most often, again, it's about assisting the mitochondria to create energy. And if the body has enough energy, it can transform it into all kinds of things. And then generally, I will not have an immune deficiency or anything along those lines if my body just has the proper energy and minerals and nutrients and all of that available. So yeah. And of course, as you can see, they can afford fancy animations, which is really cool. Yeah, not vouching for all their other dogma and ideas, but I just found it interesting that they do a particular video on mitochondria, which is certainly something to look at.
And what about?
Why did I put her up? Gaia hypothesis, single regulating system, symbiosis and evolution. I picked her up somewhere and thought she was interesting enough to put her up there. Oh, here you have it. Maybe go up. It says it in the first paragraph, I think.
Neo-Darwinism, huh? Where? Throughout her career?
It says, no, just the first, go up. So Margulis was also, all right, so here. Margulis transformed and fundamentally framed current understanding of the evolution of cells with nuclei, so with a cell core, by proposing it to have been the result of symbiotic mergers of bacteria. Margulis was also and there's also the whole thing, of course, about the so-called mitochondrial DNA. DNA is a whole contentious topic in model unto itself, but just to point out, they say that there is like cell DNA and mitochondrial DNA, which may be at least equally important. I believe they say it's usually inherited from the mother, if I remember correctly. Maybe that's how the Jews got their idea. You know, you got to have my mitochondria to join my religion. I'm not sure. The modern Orthodox ones. So it says Margulis was also the co-developer of the Gaia hypothesis. Maybe you want to pull up that, with the British chemist James Lovelock proposing that it's a single self-regulating complex system, which I guess is not wrong. Let's see, what is neo-Darwinism? It can mean anything that's after Darwin. I think you muted Andreas somehow. I'm not sure where, because it's not on StreamYard. Yes.
I think my microphone was better now. Okay,
yes,
sorry.
You're back.
I think I just said it's not Darwinism because that would be ridiculous. But okay, and then whatever. We looked at her. Then also, this is our VTuber, Nuxonor.
Oh yeah, he's funny. Actually, what you maybe want to pull up is this recent video about the Disney. So this is just about Mr. Beast. Basically, if anyone is interested in pop culture and you don't just want to watch it but have commentary, I think this guy is quite fun and also somewhat based, at least in comparison to many other channels that have high views. I mean, he's bearable for me to listen to, which says quite a lot, I think. He's also going, with regular drama. He always says he's a, what is it, like arbiter of chaos or something? So he's just there, to laugh at the chaos and following different drama things. But the one thing I wanted to show also, because it relates to one further segment we have on Disney, is the Disney adult thing. Just show an image.
Or you want to pull it up, or do I have to find it?
Oh no, it's in the list. I'm just seeing. So what we have, just to have the sections, we have a tiny bit about. There's a few more things maybe to mention. Let's just go through it. Doesn't matter. We can just continue the set path.
Disney, yeah, okay. I can go faster though. If you want to, it's your list, you can skip ahead. I mean, the honey scam influencer, you saw this.
Yeah, this is good. Yeah.
I post. It's like my most popular tweet ever.
Oh yeah, about honey.
Yeah.
Did the honey attract all the bees or the bears or something?
I want to find it. What's it called? Here we go. This is. I put uninstalled. It's got 41,000 views, and it says, "Man, the internet's slow right now." Load. So when I went to why won't this load? That's crazy. That's crazy. So I went to uninstall it, and they asked like why you're uninstalling it. What's happening? Okay, and then so I put other. Please explain. You know what you did, and so yeah, that's what you got to do to Honey, because Honey did this whole thing where they were like taking the coupons for people. So never use Honey as a promotion thing. Just never use Honey. They're evil. Okay, Tokyo, Phoenix, Rise of Modern Japan. This is the city.
Yeah, just interesting documentary, and maybe give some glimpses as also to how crazy dramatically Japan changed, just like China in the past 30 years. For Japan, it was a bit earlier. But since we're always talking about history and also recent history, and also the question, which comes up more recently more and more, how many people actually were properly clothed and civilized in the modern sense in all of the Western world that we consider today, and maybe could it have been very different only a short time ago. So yeah, this may give some hints, or at least show some pictures. Even here you see some Tartarian building. I mean, how nice. Yeah, so at least that's certainly worth looking at.
Yeah,
and Japan is cool, of course. So
cool Japan.
Yeah,
hidden teachings of Jesus, huh?
I believe this was maybe in relation to this Ralph Ellis guy who was recommended to me through chat or through a comment. I checked him out. I'm not sure if I can really jive with Ralph Ellis. He's apparently also talking about Jesus, explaining some things. I couldn't really get into the things he says or the assumptions. These I just pointed out because I found it randomly. I didn't watch it yet, but it was like, maybe there's something interesting here. And curious enough, it has a few million views. So maybe look at the comments.
I love the teachings of Jesus. All right, well, we'll check it out. It's probably about Kundalini. And then here's some DIA Soviet parapsychology research papers about the Pavlovich boxes, which were available in the Czech Republic and, useful for psychic tech, psi-tech. Right? Is that what this is about?
Yeah, it's just a reminder. You could go on, but just anyone who didn't know.
Y'all got to get this paper. Read about the Pavlita boxes. Oh, and then here's Austria's headquarters for U.S. forces. If you're looking for a job.
This is I'm looking for a job with them. This is a recurring theme we had put up last time when we spoke more about Gladio, the ridiculousness of the last weapons cache being found in Austria in 1996 or something like this. And I guess this I just pointed out because here it talks about the association of the US forces in Austria from 1945 to 1955. And just basically, especially for Americans, anybody who didn't know, I mean, I guess you knew, but you were totally occupying Austria also after defeating the Ignatius party and people and whatever, at least in official history.
Tear the baby in half, yeah.
And I think it's just, I don't know, also for me, kind of amazing because obviously I speak English and all of that, and a lot of culture comes from America. But even just to consider, 70, 80 years ago, this country I live in, which generally is seen to be very free, very well developed, and
you could have been in the Russian zone. Like, look at that.
Yeah.
You could be eating pickles right now, bro.
Yeah, so it's kind of crazy. And also it relates back even to current day events and maybe a larger shift in geopolitics as we discussed, because generally speaking, Austria should have been perfectly neutral because as you can see here, we're occupied by the French, the US, the British, and the Russians. And from what all I understand through the mainline history, education, and so on,
is you still are.
I had, well, at least in the extent that the neutrality and our constitution and so on is like contingent or let's say guaranteed by the Victory Alliance. In German, they call it Siegermächte. Yeah. So I don't know how the exact law would be technically, but overall, very much in the, at least the way I would interpret it, especially with Austria being eternally neutral, as it claims in the constitution, also because of this war and all of that, and basically also because in certain ways it seems Austria was let off the hook a little bit more or earlier than Germany in a way, in terms of maybe giving them support or allowing them to have resources or something like this, or even just to allow them to have their own constitution, because there is still the conspiracy, none there call it conspiracy. There are the 4+2 contracts or agreements between Germany and the alliance powers. And many people are saying that these 4+2 contracts actually do not allow for a properly sovereign state. I mean, even if we would say Austria is a properly sovereign state, whether it's even just basic economic relations, who is really sovereign today and who of the government are actually actors, industrialists, all of that. Yeah, but it's just interesting that today neutrality in Austria basically is not seen so important anymore. Politicians and many politicians readily take sides, for example, in the Russia-Ukraine conflict or other conflicts, and basically propagandize for one side instead of, which what they should be doing, try to be a neutral party, try to invite different individuals and try to further peace, which should be the, I guess, consensus understanding, and also the understanding most Austrians have, but this is being completely disregarded. And to me, it's kind of ridiculous. Why? Because as you can clearly see here, even though maybe the, here it says Russian zone, the Soviet Union, of course, doesn't exist anymore, but like the inheritor of that is more or less is Russia. So Austria would be bound to both the East and the West, but it doesn't really seem to comply with that. And what I wanted to say with the 4+2 contracts about Germany, Germany currently has something called a Grundgesetz, which is a foundational law, which is a very nice term. But from what I understand, they don't have a constitution. At least they don't call it that way. And that, of course, opens up all kinds of conspiracies as to whether Germany actually is at peace. And there even is something which I'd have to look up again in terms of whether or not Germany is seen as an enemy. Yeah, there's this whole, I believe in German, it's called Feindstaatenklausel. So the enemy state connotation or whatever, or enemy state rule. And at least I had heard this, that Germany still somewhere is strangely classified. I'm not sure if that's still the case. I'm not sure if that's correct. But what certainly is true from what I understand is they have this Grundgesetz and they don't have a Verfassung or constitution like Austria has, and which we are so proud of, but are utterly disregarding, as I just explained, because we're not properly being neutral and connecting and diplomatic. Although also here, I'll bring this up again very briefly. In the 70s, Austria was pretty big on the world stage because we had an individual by the name of Bruno Kreisky, social democrat, who spent huge amounts of money. Wonder where he got the financing from. Everyone can look into that. But also he was the one who was kind of allowed to play on the big stage, invite Yasser Arafat, this and that. But also he's one of the guys who attended a Bilderberg conference. So make of this what you will. And that's not, you know, the only thing to consider. But I just also want to point out is always the question in terms of the background system, which kind of capacity do you give a certain country or do you give certain individuals to play a certain role? Because if you would compare the foreign policy relevance of Austria today to the time of Bruno Kreisky, maybe now we are at 5% relevance, let's say, compared to then. But it also kind of seems deliberate because, of course, our political leaders could have acted more prudently, but there may be both internal and external and even play acting reasons as to why they didn't. And they are now blatantly disregarding this neutrality aspect.
Disney doll. I think we have the links for it. I'll get back to it. Oh, but there's a few more. The retreat. Did you want to talk the retreat ceremony practice?
So what we can do. Oh yeah, this I just found somewhat interesting. You know, how nationalism and symbolism and so on. When you arrive, I guess you arrive with your flag, and then when you leave, you fold up the flag. I just found that's an interesting, very symbolic, ritualistic thing. Obviously.
Some Boy Scout stuff we do still. Yeah, they get you with that in the Boy Scouts. They make you like care. It's weird. You feel for your flag. Which seems silly. No one else has that same freak out about their flag as America does. But
yeah, so here that's
probably something too.
World War II thing. This is about a German reporter who's talking about the diaries of Mustache Man, and from what I understand, he's like questioning it. I don't even think I saw it yet because I believe I know kind of what he's talking about, but I'll have to watch this one. And generally speaking, this channel is highly recommended, Bega Film, because what they do, crazily enough, they release witness testimony from actual, you know, soldiers or whatever, often Germans or mainly Germans, that was still active in the 30s and so on. And even many of them that were like, you know, serving Mustache Man, this or that. And why I find that interesting is because it kind of gives you, to the extent that we have, some sort of first-hand testimony of whatever went on there, whatever was being said, however people were behaving. And I find that is very interesting, and was also very astounding, especially with those guys. You see them, and often the recordings maybe were made 10 or 20 years ago, which is also amazing and great that this production company like recorded someone, 10 years ago, maybe about to die, and now we actually maybe for the first time get to see the witness testimony. I think that's amazing. And what's always amazing to me as well is that these guys are very old, but often they are very good. They remember everything. They can tell you details. They seem very well educated and really like on the level. And also many of them have a very differentiated view, both of what they did back then and also how they see it now, maybe how they themselves were tricked, and also just, again, applying what's it called, Hanlon's law. If I am able to recount this properly now, verbatim, or I'm paraphrasing, which is, in order to explain everything, simply assume people are acting moderately intelligently according to their own self-interest within a complex system, right? And then, of course, at that time, it would just be like, I don't know, if someone would be asking you, oh, you're enlisting in the US Army, and then they ask you, oh, would you like to be the personal servant for Trump? Well, who would say no? Or why would you say yes, and all of that, right? So not to compare them, which what people always love to do, but just trying to explain or being better able to understand why people were acting in a way. And just like today, for many people, something is just a job. They maybe don't even understand the grander consequence or plan or scheme behind it, but it's just, they're happy to get out of the village and be in a prestigious position. And then, of course, they give you several references because they interacted with Mustache Man, which can be somewhat interesting to see, what was he talking about, how was he acting, and all of that. Yeah. Oh, laced cigs with heroin is super.
You wanted to do the Disney.
Yeah.
I put that. I think it's still there here. If you guys want to see that existed. I mean, if you're fighting for a cause, you know what I mean. What can I say? But I was gonna skip ahead of this for a second because you wanted to look at Disney adults. Which where was that? Right here. This is the Disney adults cartoon you were talking about earlier.
Yeah,
it's about
so
these
please don't
adults who like Disney and are going to.
Don't watch it, basically. It's like
Yeah,
horrible.
it's a little
But
violent.
even when I started watching, I was kind of like, I think I almost have to see this. It's like Attack on Titan level animation. There are some interesting parts of it, and basically it kind of shows the psychosis maybe of people that, basically substitute Disney as their religion. And the shapes and forms this can take. Yeah, it's really. I mean, if you really love Disney, maybe don't watch it, because people know that there is many strange things going on with Disney. We'll bring up a few more things. It's kind of interesting to see it through this particular deliberately ugly lens, let's say.
That's what Disney adults are like. We have to grow up. It's true. And then, but Disneyland, because I'm a Disney adult, we were watching Disneyland television, which was a great series that Disney did before they had Disneyland. And this is as Disneyland was opening. They told you that every week you would enter this wonderful place. You'd visit a different world: Fantasyland, Frontierland, Tomorrowland. And this is the Tomorrowland one where they talked about man in space. Right. And it's a cool video because it has freaking Werner von Braun and who else? I mean, Will Mai or something. I forget. There's just so many crazy SS paperclip scientists in this one, which is cool. This also was interesting because it talks about what the psychologist thought would be impossible to overcome psychologically about being in vertigo constantly, and all sorts of other unanticipated issues they expected that all of a sudden just went away. And everyone said, oh, we're just so comfortable floating around in space. But it was imagined that this would be terrifying and impossible to stay calm. Right.
Yeah, so there was a time when it was portrayed to be incredibly difficult and so on. And then a few years later, it was portrayed to be maybe not incredibly easy, but suddenly all very feasible and so on. And of course, here you see Wernher von Braun, former German scientist with Mustache Man, and here head of the chemical rocket program, even though in some of these programs, some of which you've showed me, they even talk about gravitational propulsion, all of that, atomic propulsion. And then to literally have this guy, again, I'm almost like, I want to know what he was thinking for these years and promoting or building up NASA, and then at the end putting Psalms. Which one is it? Is it even 19? The Psalms with the
Might be.
firmament, Werner von Braun tombstone.
One 19. It is 19. That's hilarious.
That is hilarious.
That's really funny. And that one's about the firmament. So that's pretty good. Also, Epcot overhaul. I have not seen this, but we watched the video about the original creation of Epcot earlier. We're talking about Dr. Longo and the idea that Epcot was supposed to be the reincarnation of Atlantis and the model for Elon Musk's moon and Mars colonies, right? Like that's what Epcot's supposed to be. But you're saying this video rather is saying that they, not only failed to do that, but they wasted money.
For them, at least this is regarding a recent renovation of the past 20 years or something. And that also apparently the former, one of the former Disney heads like deliberately let it to be dilapidated. And maybe I'm a bit wondering about this also. It seems that they are not exactly doing the smart things here. And I'm just always thinking all these
That's what it felt like last. Florida always feels that way, America.
But anyways, it seems that the vision that was originally had for this place certainly was a lot greater and more sophisticated and so on than whatever they eventually ended up doing. I mean, you even mentioned to me they wanted to build a whole city, which they didn't do. And even then, it seemed that from what they could have done, they didn't really give it the effort that it would have deserved. So that's how he's describing it. And they were just concreting things around and not really developing it properly. Yeah, so this is the assisted viewing. Anyone who wants to see Disney adults and have some commentary with it because it's too traumatizing, you can listen to Nux talk about it.
Okay, and then you have here some classic stuff. What's this about?
Oh yeah, I'll explain to you in a second. Now we're in the Austria section. We spoke a little bit about politics. This is just some pop culture thing. So anyone who for some strange reason is interested in Austrian pop culture, this is one of the most famous TV series called Ein echter Wiener geht nicht unter, or A Real Viennese is not drowning or is not going under. And the special thing here is for the first time it portrays like a deliberate working class family. I even think that kind of the way they show the apartments and so on is quite realistic. I mean, you have this with many sitcoms, of course, that they like show the real thing. But this apparently for Austria was the first time where they didn't only talk about, the nobles and the beautiful rich people, but like regular folk. And at least according to what the actors and so on say here, because this was before my time, they say the streets literally were empty when they were on. So everyone was watching it. And I just know quite a few quotes, basically, that before ever having really known about this series, I had heard quotes from it because it like went into Austrian colloquial language, certain expression. Yeah, especially one, which maybe is not the nicest, but it sounds kind of fun. So in German, it is... Basically, he's then arguing with people, and it's also interesting how he's portrayed because generally, from what I understand, is quite positive. Yeah, of course, with his quirks and so on, but actually, friendly, likable, and positive. But one of the things he then says or threatens, like his children sometimes when they have an argument, and then he says, "Hör auf," so like stop this, or I first saying in German, oder ich hau dir eine Watschen runter, dass der 14 Tag der Schädel bockelt, and that means. Or I'll slap you in a way that your head will be buzzing for a fortnight or 14 days. Yeah. And that's kind of like a common thing people say, like for fun or whatever. And I'm sure there's a few more tropes from it. And this is crazy because this is decades ago, but elements from this still are part of the culture. I mean, just like with Shakespeare, invention of a whole new language. It's not a whole new language or anything, but like really popularizing an archetype and popularizing certain expressions and certain ideas.
Epic.
And maybe I showed this to you before we go on to this, maybe just very briefly, just so it's complete. I mean, this actually, we can just skip over or show it briefly and skip over it. This is just about a wine poisoning story, which was quite famous in Austria a few decades ago. And to this day, I had relayed this before, most, unfortunately, wineries in Austria use sulfur, use some kind of whatever, even some that supposedly have labels where they wouldn't technically be allowed to do it, but people still fudge. And there's only like a handful of wineries in Austria or vineyards that really do 100% biodynamic farming, where they really use no synthetic chemicals at all. They do stuff like agriculture and so on. So yeah, just want to point out today, I guess most wine in Austria is, or all wine ideally, is certified and clean to drink, let's say, but still there is very immense differences in quality, of course. And generally you don't want to have added sulfur because that's what makes headache. And also, if you actually have a soil that is stable enough and roots that are stable enough, you don't need to add sulfur to your wine to make it stable. So the individual I spoke to who is running such a biodynamic vineyard, they have bottles like decades old that are still fine. And that's simply because the root of the vine or whatever had the proper nutrients, and that this was somewhat infused into the wine itself, which then makes it stable, let's say, and no need for extra artificial things. So yeah, this is about the scandal. Anyone who likes can check this out. And this is now the nice and beautiful or Austria construction story, Vienna. This is about the Ringstraße. So the Ring Street, which is surrounding the first district, may have also been part of an old city wall. If you look at old Vienna images, you have a star fort city, basically. If the images aren't invented, then Austria totally was a star fort city. And here they most likely talk about the official mainland history of how all the nice buildings on this Ring Street were constructed, which you've seen by now. There's many nice buildings, parliament buildings, palais, and all of that. Of course, by now I would say it's not exactly clear if this story is correct the way they portray it. Also because up to this day, I could never find proper photographic or any documentation of this, even though they say they have photography since 1860. The only images you find of constructions of a church or whatever are like 300 by 200 pixels or something, at least online. So they certainly don't make it easy and are like, oh, look, here are the architecture contracts and all of that, or maps and so on. It's not really readily distributed, which of course then opens up the question whether the story they present here actually is correct. Yeah. Oh yeah, and then here, so this is part of the Austrian pop culture idea. To anyone who thought the other thing was interesting, this is the 90s variant of like this pop culture thing, which is about the 20th district, Donaustadt, or sorry, Kaisermühlen, I'm not sure if it's 20 years now, which is just across the Danube. As you can see here, it's kind of a nice idyllic realm. And they chose basically to do a sitcom, I think 7 or 10 seasons, like it went for a long, long time. Also very iconic with very well-known Austrian actresses and actors. And yeah, it's like, the local thing, which I guess you only really get if you have some relationship to Viennese culture or something. But yeah, just relaying it in terms of, cultural ambassador, anyone who a strange reason is interested, these are things you can look at. And here, this is funny, just maybe briefly pause, because these two guys, they're the main, let's say, fathers of the two families the story is about. And they are both actually local, let's say, district council members. So they are both politicians. One is a socialist and one is a economy party or people's party guy. So technically the basic left wing and right wing. You also have a freedom party guy, which I had mentioned earlier. He's usually portrayed as being, a hothead and no one likes him and he's being excluded, which certainly was how it was back then. But it's also funny because you kind of see these low-level politicians, of course, very humanized and very humorous. And it's really, it's funny. Like I said, if you can vibe with it, and it's one of the most well-known series, along with Ein echter Wiener geht nicht unter, Kaisermühlen Blues. So the blues of that district, between comedy and tragedy.
Nice. Let's try. Hold on. I guess we also have a bit of um, Balkan video games were different.
Yeah, so I didn't know much about this, but of course it seems in the whole communist bloc, let's say, they had, of course, different accessibility to video games. I didn't know that. And what I find very interesting is apparently they often then were reselling old computers from the West, and someone somewhere then was installing a whole bunch of games on it. And basically you got a computer delivered pre-installed with whatever games they had on deck, which I actually think is kind of amazing and almost better service than if you have to buy everything new, right? Of course, the issue being at that point that most of the computers were like
Totally.
potato level quality, but still a fun thing, like how, yeah, and I'm not sure how to say. There is something to say about a low level, non-violent, sharing information type black market, you know?
Absolutely.
Sharing data and games.
My internet's slow because I opened all the windows at once. I shouldn't have opened all those windows at once. Oh no. Is it okay?
Yeah, you're okay.
Okay. It should be fine. But yeah, I would say I remember as a kid going to Croatia and people having every game. And yeah, your computer would be set up by some computer wizard who would be happy to install every emulator. And everyone who had like a PlayStation, it would be modded. It was a good world. There was no sort of DRM copy protection. That was all crap. And similarly, the games that you could get, there were Russian games. Like, so that was always interesting. There were more different games, and German computer games and Russian computer games were totally different than Western games. So you had a lot of interesting puzzles and frog games, and I don't know. Life was cool. Life was cool back then. This guy watched every single anime from the Flying Cult, or is this a different cult? This is a whole different cult. Which cult does he watch an anime
I'd be
from?
surprised if you don't know about it, but I was like, this is certainly something you'll be into, so I just wanted to put it there. Apparently some Japanese cult, and I think they did something great.
Nice.
So they made these animations to like further propaganda. So they do the same everyone else is doing, but of course, because they're obviously a cult, they are the one being picked fun at. But yeah, also I think like the art style, I like it. I didn't watch the animations themselves yet, but like this is how you do it. Of course, if you want to have a religion, you have to create proper media. And just because they're not as big as maybe the Catholics or whoever else, they get pointed out for it. But yeah, I think it's a logical thing.
Right.
Doesn't seem that necessarily their beliefs or their leader exactly was as they portrayed themselves to be, which is usually what happens with cults anyways, right? So no surprises here. But I just found it's kind of cool that they actually created animations, right?
And then this is slowly loading, but what is this video?
Oh yeah, this is funny because actually in the beginning it's Hungarian, but the title says something else, I believe. I was a bit confused by that. We can't see the title of the video because it's not loading. It's hilarious. So let me see. This is Serbian TV. Oh, maybe this is, I think this is Serbian TV Was Insane. Maybe that's the one.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And it has this guy who was like a fake psychic messing with people.
So apparently a fake psychic.
Very cool.
The people who were calling in, they thought that he was legit, but basically he did like a stand-up routine for everyone else to kind of, I don't know, make fun of people that believe in parapsychology or whatever else. And again, in a way, as much as I can appreciate the comedic value of it, the real issue is just that we showed before with the Czech parapsychology or whatever, or you have the US remote viewers, Russian, whatever, mountains of evidence. And even if you know anybody who's not completely close-minded, you will have had synchronistic moments or some sort of telepathy or so on. So it's always a bit sad because these things actually are very real. But then for some people who only see it through this lens, of course, it's completely ridiculous and nonsensical and made to be that way, right? In case of this psychic, right? So because I myself and also
Oh,
through
so good.
relations know of too many instances where actually, you know, psychic phenomena did occur. And anyhow, shout out to Julia. Totally want to have a show with you soon, Julia, who's a remote viewer who you've had on
Yeah.
many times. So she can tell us more about this and how it's real. But yeah, of course, you will always have people making fun of it, which can also be hilarious. Not gonna lie, right?
We got some more of the
this
AI
mob.
song
No,
from
this
the
is
Door
just
Brothers.
this is just another really. I mean, these Door Brothers, they really do crazy fun animations, but also they always pick the right songs. So I definitely can recommend them. If they wouldn't copyright strike everything and limit everything, I'd be playing one of their tracks every time we start a show. Oh, and here just a documentary about Miyazaki, who of course is amazing and interesting. So I thought anyone who doesn't know about it yet can definitely check him out. Arte is this channel, which now you can access because you're in Europe. If you try to access this channel in America, you may not be able to do it. But then, you know, VPN link is also below, by the way, guys, if you need it. So
exactly. Busta Rhymes has a new song out. He's breaking the chains.
oh yeah, so this is just curious because suddenly all kinds of OG rappers, and honestly Busta Rhymes, at least in terms of his ability that is portrayed, I like him, I have to say. And it's just interesting that quite a few of them now this year, as the whole drama with Diddy and so on went crazy, are suddenly releasing new songs. I think even maybe Snoop Dogg also. So I'm kind of like wondering, like, why did their handlers suddenly say, oh, now 10 years later you got to make a song or something? I haven't really figured out.
Or because like they're no longer blacklisted and they know they can do it. Who knows? This could be a possible thing that they were like canceled by the evil ones, and now the evil ones are canceled.
Well, let's hope so.
Dr. Kim Jong-un inspects. Isn't it important to have Dr. Kim Jong-un inspect?
And now tell me why is it generally, you know, condoned to show this, but like certain propaganda
this guy knows good
other
food.
Propaganda you're not allowed to see. Yeah, no, this guy is, it's just amazing. And I think why I always love to see things from North Korea and watch documentaries and so on, and then what I would like to encourage everyone is, if you can, in a certain positively paranoid sense, imagine what if you're in actually a similar situation. What I mean by that is you're being misled in certain ways, you're being potentially brainwashed and deceived in certain ways, resources or technology may be withheld for you, certain few other people may benefit, they may tell you wrong things about your neighbors and other people and all of that, they may restrict you ideologically and also geographically. We just talked about Antarctica. Oh, don't worry, everyone can go.
Guy's standing there and it must smell so bad. He's just smiling like that.
So I think it's a great mind exercise to put yourself into that place and then imagine, okay, of course, in the West, if there was any control system or any deception going on, it would, of course, have to be somewhat more grander and sophisticated than what they can do in little North Korea. But still, seeing this as an example and a pattern, I think is highly useful to then apply the same thing to your own world and your own supposed culture, which in the West is meant to be so free, and just check if it actually really is that free, right?
North Korea is so based. Oh my god. All right, and then Pete and Bass mugshot. These guys, you know what? I'm ruining it already because you have to listen to the song to get it, but you don't expect these guys to be singing the song. Trust me. You know,
so this is one of their most recent things. The initial thing I showed was the AI thing with, again, with Door Brothers, which is, I guess, one of my favorite songs. What's it called? T-Pain, right? T-Pain is the song by Pete and Bass, but with AI art by Door Brothers. That's the one I showed a few episodes back. People liked it because it's really a banger. Yeah, it's amazing.
Pete and Bass hit hard.
How these guys can rap the way they do. And I said the same thing that you said when I first listened to them. I thought like, oh, this is like a 35-year-old black dude, you know, and I'm sorry, I don't want to be racist, but I just really couldn't imagine that voice belonging to 75-year-old white, I'm not sure how to say, UK guys.
British people. British people, yeah.
Dialect.
It's all right. It's okay to be British. Well, you know what's crazy? You know what's crazy? Where's the let's go to the this one. It's fine. What's crazy is it's about 2 hours deep right now, Raph. We're about 2 hours deep into the NEUROPA show.
9 p.m. and you're due for the next show. Well, good for your audience. Everyone, like, share, and subscribe to Xirtus if you wish, if you enjoy the show.
And in NEUROPA.
And enjoy the next show, which is 8 p.m.
Yeah. No, actually, Think Tank. Think Tank is happening in a minute. Everybody join Think Tank. But make sure you take the time to subscribe also to Commency. Go to Act Like You Know 26 on YouTube. If you're not watching that stream right now, you probably are. Half of you are going to be watching over there already. But make sure you subscribe to Raphael's channel, Act Like You Know 26, because ain't he groovy? See you guys at Think Tank.